I want to ask about the central bankers printing money. This is an important part of your book because at the 2008, you cite this as a pivotal point. You say in the 15 years since capitalism's near-death experience, central bankers have been printing monies and channeling them to the financiers entirely of their own accord. In their minds, they have been saving capitalism. In reality, they have been upending it by helping to finance the emergence of cloud capital. But that's how history arrives, on the coattails of unintended consequences. Explain what happened.
Well, we all know what happened in 2007, 2008. A 20-year period of irrational exuberance, which was essentially Wall Street printing its own money. to cut a long story short, to keep it very technically minimal. Essentially, they were printing their own money. Why did they do that? Because after 1971, after the United States became a deficit country, it went from a trade surplus to a trade deficit, and with the Nixon shock in 1971, essentially what every government in Washington did was to intentionally boost the trade deficit. And the trade deficit became a remarkable tool for the United States of enhancing American hegemony, which is crazy. It sounds crazy because never before has a deficit enhanced the hegemonic power of the hegemon. It has done the opposite. It brought down the Roman Empire, the Dutch Empire, the British Empire. But in the case of the American Empire of the United States, it enhanced its hegemony. But what that did, man, how did it do it? The trade deficit sucked into the United States the net exports of the Germans, of the Japanese, later of the Chinese. And then what did these capitalists, non-American capitalists, do with the dollars that they were paid? They took it to New York. So there was a tsunami of capital from the 1970s all the way to today coming into New York City, into Wall Street. And of course, if you give a Wall Street financier a few billion to play with every day, even if it's only for 10 minutes, they find ways to financialize it, to build bets on that money, derivatives, CDOs, CDO squares, CDSs, and so on, right? And so effectively they were minting their own money. But they overdid it. After the Clinton administration effectively unleashed them completely from all the impediments and the shackles that the New Deal and the 1960s Bretton Woods system had imposed on the bankers, that went through Larry Summers and Tim Geithner, appointed by, who else? Barack Obama. So they went crazy. They went berserk. To give our audience an example, in the year 2001, total planetary income was around 50. Forget the zeros. It was around 50 trillion. It's around 50 in 2000, 2001, 50. The derivative trades were 70. Okay, that's in 2000. By 2007, total income, planetary income, went from 50 to 70, and the derivative trade went from 70 to 780. So there wasn't enough room on planet Earth. So they came crashing down. In a complete state of panic, the leaders of the West, presidents, prime ministers, and their central bankers, gathered in London in April of 2009, if you remember. And they all agreed to refloat finance, essentially socialism for the bankers. At the same time, every single Western jurisdiction imposed austerity on its people. So you have this combination of austerity for the many, depressing demand for goods and services, and lots of money for big capital. Because this, all the money that the central banks were printing and giving to the bankers of Wall Street, of Frankfurt, of London, of Paris, and so on, was flowing to big business. Now, traditional big businesses like General Motors, General Electric, Volkswagen, and so on, they looked outside the window of the skyscrapers and they saw impecunious masses. These people have no money. As if I'm going to invest in production lines that would produce, snazzy, new, expensive products. They won't be able to afford it, the many. But they still took the money from the central bank and rushed to the stock exchanges to buy back their own shares. So, if you are Volkswagen, you don't want to produce expensive cars because the many can't afford them, but the central bank gives you free money. So what do? You buy Volkswagen shares. Similar in the United States. That creates no investment, no good quality jobs, but it creates a very nice little earner for the capitalists. And here is the crux. The only capitalists who actually took this money and invested it in machines were the Jeff Bezoses, the Elon Musks, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Nvidias, the Intels of the world. 9 out of every $10 that they invested in cloud capital, in Meta, in Google and so on, 9 out of every $10 has come from money that was printed by the Fed, by the US Central Bank.
And as you point out in the book, they didn't make profits.
They didn't need to make profits.
Yeah.
Because it's all rent. Yeah, that's the thesis in my book. So essentially, society paid for the cloud capital of the new masters of the universe, who are no longer the bankers so much, but they are the owners of cloud capital, whom I have decided to call cloudalists because I like the term. It comes from Star Trek, but that's another story.
Yeah, you do have Star Trek in there. What do you have with the Borg in there, right?
I'm a Trekkie. What can I do?
I would put my wife on. She's a total techie. Okay.